This is the Middle-earth philosopher. The Lord of the Rings trilogy is an adaptation of the books, as everybody knows. Some changes were made for the sake of successfully communicating the theme of the story, or sections of the story, on screen for those of us who never read the books. However, in my opinion, they did get a lot of things right, and top among them was the portrayal between Aragorn and Boromir. One of the first videos I ever did for this channel was how Boromir was my favorite character and why. But what sells him is how he relates to Aragorn. They both represent similar lineages in a way, but also come from long-standing opposing factions, that of Gondor in the south and the Dunedain in the north. While it never developed into open warfare, it was also no secret that since the stewards started ruling Gondor in the first place, that they saw their distant northern kin as uncivilized rivals that knew nothing of Gondor beyond their mutual ancient history. The movies never go into much detail about why this is, beyond subtle hits here and there. But the clearest indication is when Boromir first meets Aragorn and calls him a friend. But after that, he cuts himself on the broken blade of Narsil, which he calls a broken heirloom, and later finding out that Aragorn is actually the last king of Gondor by technicality. Since that point, becomes hostile and suspicious of him. Movie Aragorn is not like book Aragorn, as we all know. He is still well-traveled, wise, and courageous, but is also much more introverted when allowed to be, and not actually wanting the throne of Gondor, unlike his book version. Yet, Boromir still regards him as a threat because his mere existence does legally make his own family's ruling lineage obsolete, if Aragorn ever chose to claim the throne. When you look at it from a certain point of view, it's definitely more of a Game of Thrones type worldview than anything else, and something that would probably be the case if it was that universe. But it's not. The movies posit Boromir as a near antagonist because of this, yet also puts Aragorn under that same scrutiny. In fact, you could say that Aragorn actually started the feud. Recall that during that same scene with Narsil cutting Boromir, that while Boromir was initially friendly to Aragorn, Aragorn himself regarded Boromir with suspicion, through that entire scene actually, and that it's only when noticing this, after he cuts himself, that Boromir then becomes equally distrustful. This is actually pretty close to the book version in that Aragorn was excessively protective about that sword. He continues to be wary of Boromir throughout the journey, though assisting each other. Aragorn is always very reserved around himself, others around him, and it's like he's holding back something, even after Boromir starts to get over his own suspicions. Aragorn's issues stem not from the rivalry for the throne, but rather that he knows their history, and that he knows that men who are rulers are also susceptible to Sauron. Boromir, being the heir of the ruling steward, automatically rose red flags for Aragorn, and this finally comes out when they had their argument about going to Gondor, where Aragorn blasts Boromir and Gondor as enemies in waiting to their quest. Both men have issues with each other, and themselves personally, and they both relate to their own lineages. Despite this tension though, both characters also become brothers through these trials. While Boromir did ultimately fail to the ring's influence, Aragorn couldn't judge him for it because he too also felt that same influence and was himself not immune to it. Moreover, Boromir didn't remain in that state, but literally fought his way out of it, trying to rescue Merry and Pippin. The experience changes both men's worldview. Boromir finally understanding that the One Ring can never be used for good, no matter the intention, and Aragorn finally understanding that while humans are susceptible to the fall of temptation, it doesn't necessarily mean that they remain under that temptation, and are capable of moving past it if given the chance, something I think is implied that the elves didn't teach him. That's why I love this relationship between Aragorn and Boromir, even if it's not entirely book accurate. On the surface, it looks pretty black and white and about what's going on, but upon closer inspection, that the two members of the Fellowship are actually more alike than they are different. and that they're able to admit that before it was too late. And it makes me wonder what would have happened if Boromir had survived, how that relationship would have developed, especially in light of Boromir's own father, Denethor. But if you happen to agree or disagree with that comment, please let me know below. But otherwise, this is the Middle Earth Philosopher, and you guys have a good day.